Hello, I'm Nedra Knurk, President of Futura RGV, and I want to welcome our candidates. Our moderator, Davis Rankin, who is not here because Davis, unfortunately, he only has a stomach problem, so he doesn't have COVID, but we miss him and we want him to get well fast. So I'll introduce our moderator in a moment. But welcome to our candidates, our moderators, and all the people who are watching out there on our Facebook page and our website. We are very happy to present our forum for the Democratic candidates for the U.S. Congress seat District 15. And all of the District 15 voters can watch on the Futura RGV Facebook page right now. And then later, up until the election, they can watch on our website and hear what our candidates have to say and how they are going to serve you. So then I want to thank our sponsors, Rhodes Enterprise, AT&T, Sam Garcia Architect, Frost Bank, IBC Bank, DHR Health, Rio Bank, LNF Distributors, Ernie Williams, Copy Zone, Upper Valley Mail Service, and Crazy Stupid Live Video Creator with Milo Rodriguez, who is over here doing the recording. So thank you, Milo. And I also want to thank Stephen Wingert, Gabriel Ramirez, Matt Sestala. I think I mispronounced your name, Matt. They're all of the Monitor, and we are very grateful that they have given us their facilities and their technical expertise to bring this candidate forum to you. And so now I want to introduce our moderator, who is taking the place of Davis Rankin, J.D. Salinas. And thank you for your last minute coming. Now, we also have Naxley Lopez of the Monitor, who is speeding across well, no, she's not. We'll hope she's not speeding. Naxley Lopez of the Monitor, who served as our moderator last week, and she is joining J.D. Salinas, and they are going to be very creative in how they question the candidates. So we are all set to bring this candidate forum with the District 15 candidates to you now, and I will turn it over to our moderator, J.D. Salinas.
Thank you, Ms. Knurk. Thank you, Ms. Knurk, and thank you, Futura RGV, and your board members for having this important forums. As you know, this is the U.S. District 15 race, and so today we have our candidates here before us, and we'll ask some important questions that are important to South Texas. So the candidates each know the rules, and we'll go ahead and start with our first question. And the answer, we'll take a minute and a half for opening statement and ask you for this question. Besides the people in your community, in our community, right? What do you see as District 15's single biggest asset or single greatest concern, and how would you lead to address this concern? We'll start with Ms. Vallejo, and the order is picked by the order of the ballot, which was already pre-positioned in our ballot. So, Ms. Vallejo, if you can start, please.
Absolutely. I am the daughter and a businesswoman who grew up right here in our beautiful district of Texas 15. I'm a proud product of Mission CISD, where at 7 years of age, at first grade, my teacher noticed that I did not know how to read. That is when my school administrators and educators immediately surrounded me with resources like one-on-one tutoring that granted me the access to go to Columbia University to study political science and history. While at university, my mother took her last breath at only 46 years of age after suffering from multiple sclerosis for 15 years. This experience shook me to the core, but also brought my life into perspective. And since then, I've been working with my dad in Alton, Texas to run our pulga, but also with people all across La Frontera and throughout all of South Texas to fight for a better quality of life for us all. The biggest issue that our district faces is that we need to ensure all South Texans have access to a dignified life. This is why I am proud to be the Pueblo's candidate and to be a candidate that was chosen by the people to prioritize access to health care, a livable wage, a federal jobs program that focuses on fixing our crumbling infrastructure and investing in and embracing in our greatest asset, which is our border. for the beautiful and vibrant fusing place of ideas, culture, and innovation that it is. Our greatest concern is getting distracted of this fact and being ignored by DC and by Austin, but I will not allow that. I am here to serve and to continue working closely with all communities and all community members throughout our entire district and to ensure a better quality of life for us all. Por fin.
Thank you, Ms. Vallejo. Now we'll go to the next one on our on the ballot order, Ms. Alvarado.
Thank you so much, Futuro RGV, for hosting this event, and Maxi Lopez and JD Salinas for moderating. I'm Dr. Elisa Alvarado, your candidate for Texas Congressional District 15. I grew up in Far Texas, and I have dedicated my work experience to enhancing the lives of people in our community. My parents instilled in me the importance of education and giving back. Because of this, I earned a bachelor's in government, a master's in political management, and a doctor's in public affairs. I made it my responsibility to help others by giving back to our region. Our single greatest asset is our proximity to the border, which provides an economic engine that promotes trade and commerce and creates jobs while attracting companies to this region. This asset has allowed us to grow even during the uncertain times of the pandemic. The Infrastructure and Jobs Bill will continue the improvements of the funding, and more economic growth will help us attract and compete for top-tiered companies. Alternatively, I will say that our greatest concern is our continued lack of political power at both the federal and state level. I'm tired of the nation seeing us as just a region with an immigration problem, and our state continues to reduce our voice through redistricting and voter suppression. When in office, I will dedicate my efforts to work in voter rights to convey that we are a vibrant and dynamic region and not just a place to be vilified as a lawless border.
Thank you, Ms. Alvarado. Next on the ballot, when you come vote and in March primary, it'll be Mr. Julio Garza. Mr. Garza.
Thank you and good afternoon, everybody. My name is Julio Garza. I am seeking the Democratic nomination for District 15. I was born and raised here in the Valley. I am a small business owner and part-time rancher, and I am no stranger to public service. I have been serving since President Obama as a precinct chair for the local Democratic Party. I have interned for you at the state legislature and want to continue serving you as your next congressman, if you'll have me, of course. I believe in forward-thinking solutions for our current problems. No more Band-Aids or minor meddling. The nation right now has serious problems and needs serious solutions. From extremists to COVID, from labor to climate change, we need someone who will not only represent us, but fight for us and alongside us. I feel everyone on this stage can do a great job, better than whatever the Republicans can produce. But I know I can do it just a little bit better. I would like to thank Futuro RGV and the League of Women Voters for holding this forum and informing everyday citizens of what will be on the ballot this March. Thank you, guys. And our biggest asset, I feel, is our sense of community. Everyone down here knows everybody pretty much and usually likes to help out everybody. Our biggest concern, I feel, is COVID for the third year in a row. And if elected to Congress, I would push for vaccine mandates and a better healthcare system.
Thank you, Mr. Garza. Next in the ballot would be Mr. John Villarreal Rigney. Mr. Rigney.
Thank you, sir. So first, I'd like to thank Futuro RGB, Nidra Knurk, and the League of Women for hosting us this evening. My name is John Villarreal Rigney, and I believe that the greatest asset of our district, besides the families, is our relationship with our neighbors to the south. The border we have with Mexico and the millions of dollars of trade and incoming produce we have every year is crucial to our economy. Our District 15 is a pipeline to feed our nation. When COVID happened and the border shut down, it crippled a lot of the small businesses and our local jobs. So the greatest concern we have at this time is how do we get our businesses and our families to get back to work? We need to make sure that our businesses and our families can thrive in this economy. COVID hurt us and took away many jobs, and we need to recover from that. So in order to address these concerns, I would go to Washington and make sure that every piece of legislation that comes before us is beneficial to our families and small businesses. We need someone in Washington that will propose and support legislation that helps our businesses and families thrive. I'm not a politician, and that is going to go to Washington simply to follow the majority. I am going to go to address all of the issues as a family man and a small business owner. That is how I'm going to make sure that I take care of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rigney. Now, Ms. Vanessa Stephanie Tijerina.
Hello, my name is Vanessa Stephanie Tijerina. I ran for this seat back in 2016 when I had basically no name recognition. I'm running now again to finish what I started back in 2016. I had identified at that point, after being a nurse for 25 years and having 4 children, I understood that the issues of the Rio Grande Valley were greater than anybody could have ever imagined. Not only did we have issues at our school level, at our city level, our county level, and our state level, we didn't have leaders that were identifying these issues. We were asked, what is our single biggest asset? The single biggest asset of any community in any nation of this world is our children. That's our single biggest asset. And if we do not promote the best outcomes for those children, then we are forsaking our own futures. These children are going to be our future leaders. They're going to be our future teachers. They're going to be our future solution producers. And if we do not do what we can, then we are forsaking our future. Without justice, there's no equality. Without equality, there's no equality of opportunity. And without equality of opportunity, we cannot maximize our biggest asset, which is our children. Vanessa Tijerina, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tijerina. And last to answer today is Mr. Ruben Ramirez. Thank you, Mr. Ramirez.
Thank you, Mr. Salinas. Thank you to the monitor, Futuro RGV, the League of Women's Voters, and everybody joining us tonight to become an informed voter. My name is Ruben Ramirez, and I was born and raised here in the Rio Grande Valley, raised by a loving grandmother and father who understood the importance of hard work and a good education. They understood that a good education was the key to be able to break this cycle of poverty. Now, I was lucky enough to go to college and became a teacher at Edinburgh High School, where I taught chemistry and physics for 5 years. While teaching, I signed up for the Army Reserves, and when my country needed me to deploy to Afghanistan, that's where I went. I deployed for a year, kissed my wife and son goodbye, not knowing what the future held. Upon returning from Afghanistan, where I earned a Bronze Star, I immediately went to law school and became a lawyer. And today, I advocate for justice and equality in the courtrooms for our community. Now, I'm running for Congress because I want to continue that service to our community and to our country. Now, too many kids, right? I want to advocate for the kids. I want to advocate for the hardworking South Texas families who are finding it very hard to succeed. I want to make sure that they have a fair opportunity to be able to rise above the circumstances and be able to live that American dream and get a solid education. Now, our biggest asset is our South Texas family values of hard work, of family, and community. Our biggest concern is that too many families are struggling here. And I want to make sure, and we cannot have weak representation in this district, because we are too reliant on federal dollars for our community and federal policy that affects us.
Thank you, Mr. Ramirez.
Thank you.
The first question was taken by Ms.
Just a minute here, if I can get this going. All right, one of the strengths we have here in the valley is that when you have a problem and you have an emergency, you have people who step up and take on the challenge and do it very effectively. And so we now have Naxley Lopez joining J.D. Salinas. I can't tell you how much I appreciate both of you. And they are going to innovate and share the responsibilities of moderating. And so
Thank you, Nidra.
you're on.
Our first question was answered by Ms. Rochelle Vallejo, who was first on the ballot. We're going to alternate who answers the next questions as we go on. I want to, like Nidra said, I want to welcome Ms. Lopez for joining us today. She is with the monitor and has done a great job in not only stepping in, but she's had done a great job of moderating previous races before. So, Ms. Lopez,
Thank
take it
you
away.
so
Yes.
much, and thank you for inviting me to be here. Thank you all for also being here. This is obviously a very important race. All eyes, right, I would say, in the country are looking at this race. So I'd be remiss if I didn't start with probably the biggest issue that you guys will probably be talking about, immigration. Do you guys support a pathway to citizenship for people who aren't legally present in the United States? And if so, how would that pathway work? So we're going to start with Ms. Alvarado.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I believe that in our region, and particularly in District 15, we have a workforce shortage. Part of alleviating that workforce shortage is working on comprehensive immigration reform. And I think it's important that as a representative, we work with our local leadership to understand what that pathway to citizenship will look like. I know in 1986, Reagan had the Immigration Reform and Control Act, and he led a pathway to citizenship for over 2 million undocumented workers. My parents both were part of that citizenship. I believe it's important as part of comprehensive immigration reform to have a pathway to citizenship.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And candidates, please remember that we have a minute to answer each of the questions, so we don't want to cut you short, but I just want, as a reminder. So, next in the ballot, Mr. Garza. Julio.
All right, Mr. Garza.
Yes, I feel immigration is a very important issue. One thing I feel we should do right away is grant citizenship to the Dreamers. They've lived here their entire life. We've already invested in them. I feel it's horrible the way we're holding them in limbo like this. They need direct citizenship right away. And the doctor's right. We do have a labor shortage right now, and I feel the issue at the border is a bad one. I feel like it's a humanitarian issue instead of a security issue, and I feel amnesty would really help out and would really help what's going on with our labor shortage, and Reagan did it, so I think we can do it again.
All right, thank you so much. Mr. Rigney.
Yes, ma'am, thank you. So immigration is dear to my heart, too. I'm Villarreal Rigney. My mother was originally born in Mexico. She immigrated to this country, and she did it to come to this country to earn the American dream. So she came to this country, she learned English, she applied for her citizenship, and she got to work. And so I'm a product of that woman who wanted to come to this country and chase the American dream. So I absolutely support a pathway for people that are in Mexico that want to come here and be productive members of our economy. The problem we have right now is with the current system, we have all of these cartels and taking advantage of these people and taking their money and hurting them, raping them, killing them, and we need to put a stop to that. Now, part of that pathway needs to be, we still need to secure our borders. Okay, we don't want cartels and drugs running across our border freely. So we need to create a pathway so that we don't have people trying to cross the river because they feel like that's the only way. We want them to come to our bridge, knock on our door, tell us, here's who I am. We vet them to make sure they're good, and we let them come to work.
Okay. Ms. Tijerina.
I love this topic because this is one of the topics that sets our party apart from the Republicans, and it really emphasizes our level of empathy. I truly believe that we need, one thing that I really don't like is when the Republicans state, my parents came here the legal way, the legal way, the legal way. It's like what Mr. Villarreal Rigney said. It used to be, it was very easy to go ahead and, step up and just knock on the door, but we don't make it easy for them. We make it really difficult for them. And these are families with children that are trying to cross the river. And because of that, they are putting their lives at risk, and they are trying to come in here, and then they don't let us know that they're here. So they don't get the proper representation, and they do need representation. And because of all that, it's an inhumane way it's an inhumane pathway to citizenship, and we just need to make it more humane. We need to process them. They are asylum seekers, not illegals.
Okay. Mr. Tijerina.
Mr. Ramirez.
Oh, Mr. Ramirez.
Can you repeat the question? It was on a pathway to citizenship for the people that are here, right?
Yes. So
Not
do you
based on-
support, and if so, what would that pathway look like?
Okay, just making sure I understood the question. So as a teacher, I've had many students in my classroom who were undocumented, right? And they were brought here through no fault of their own. Now, understand that there must be a pathway to citizenship for these people who don't even know any other country, who don't even know the native language of the country that they come from. It'd be inhumane to send them back. Now, understand that we've already invested in these children. We've educated them. We've provided services to them. So why would we want to lose that brain drain? Now, the pathway to citizenship will allow them to be able to pay taxes and become productive members of the society. But what would it look like? Well, it would have to be bipartisan, because what happens is you get extremes on both sides, right? Where you get one party going, pushing things through, it gets undone, and then you get the other side doing the same thing, where they undo it and then they put their version. We need lasting change. So it would look bipartisan, and to make sure, and it should be done in a humane way. But I look forward to talking about immigration later.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Ramirez.
My pleasure.
Next question is, we just finished our anniversary. Oh, yes.
I need to answer the question.
Oh, my
Oh, I'm
goodness.
sorry. Ms. Vallejo, sorry.
It's okay, it's
Thank you
okay.
for keeping us honest here.
But
Sorry.
it ties in with my answer. I am very passionate about immigration, and I think it's very important, and I appreciate you asking it first, because it is imperative that Congress understands the unique needs that we have here in the border. For too long, and most recently in the previous elections, we have seen this exact topic being used as a divisive tactic to tear our communities apart, our families, our friends apart. And we cannot stand for that. It is a human right to allow people who are seeking asylum access for protection. And we must make sure that our community, our district, is an example, not just to Texas, not just to the country, but to the world, of how to be a border that embraces community, that embraces innovation, that is rooted from the solutions that are coming from home. It is important that Congress know that we know what we need in our communities, and especially when it comes to immigration, because we are the ones who are the products of this transition of people, and this is our home, this is our life. So it's important that we get to Congress and we make sure that they know what we need here, and that is how we're going to get our pathway to citizenship. And I am going to be so passionate and so loud about making sure that we get that access. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Vallejo. When I ask the next question, you'll see why I was in a hurry. As we all know, we just finished our first anniversary of an unfortunate event. January 6, 2021, thousands of people who supported President Donald Trump stormed the U.S. Capitol, attacked law enforcement officers, and temporarily stopped Congress from counting electoral votes. Texas Senator Ted Cruz called it, and I quote, a violent terrorist attack on the Capitol, but then apologized, calling this description sloppy and frankly dumb. How would you describe what happened that day? And I will start with Mr. Julio Garza.
Thank you. I feel January 6th was a horrible moment in U.S. history. It was the first time the disruption of peaceful transfer was powered, which is a hallmark of our democracy. And I feel the government has not done enough to hold extremists and insurrectionists accountable. They really should be locked up. I mean, they violated everything we hold dear. Not only them, but also the people in Congress that supported this big lie and went along with it. And it's super scary when you think about fascists and autotrophs taking over this nation. And in Congress, I would hold them accountable and would really work for voting rights, because that's how we'll keep them in their place.
Thank you. Mr. Rigney.
Thank you. So what happened on that day, I mean, it's a shame. It's a shame on our country. It's a shame on our democracy. What happened that day was just plain and simple an attack on our democracy, and we can't stand for that. It should have been a peaceful transfer of power, and I don't know what these people were thinking, but it shouldn't have happened. So really, what we need to do is have more information for the people. We need to be able to understand that we are a nation that should work together. We can't fight and kill ourselves just for no reason at all. I mean, I don't know how to describe it other than I don't know what they were thinking, but it's an attack on our democracy, and we cannot stand for that kind of behavior.
Thank you, Mr. Rigney. We'll go next to Ms. Vanessa Stephanie Tijerina. Ms. Tijerina.
The question was, what would we call that day? I would call that day the most, if not one of the most, biggest acts of domestic terrorism there has ever been in the United States, of modern times especially. And all of that occurred simply because of hateful rhetoric that was allowed to be propagated amongst the public with no correction at all. And because we had no correction, and I know that we have freedom of speech, the problem is that hate speech is not regulated the way that it should be. And when you have the biggest names in our nation, the biggest titles in our nation, bolstering that speech, bolstering the extremists that were the ones that were behind this attack, then you are basically enabling these acts of direct domestic terrorism. That's what I call it.
Thank you, Ms. Tijerina. Mr. Ruben Ramirez, how would you describe that day, January 6, 2021?
It definitely was an insurrection, and it was an attack on democracy and the foundation of what makes America great. As the only veteran on this panel that has sworn oath to protect and defend against all enemies, foreign and domestic, it hit to my heart when I saw that day. I was sick to my stomach. It's unfortunate. As a soldier, you go home and you want to keep your country safe, and you return to this, and it's a travesty. It felt like a gut punch. It really did. Democracy doesn't just work when you win. You can't pick and choose when you want to follow democracy. It's a set of rules that we all agree to abide by. And we need to make sure that we hold the people that started that accountable, because I was very, very upset that other people lacked the moral courage, the fortitude, especially representatives and senators that could not stand up. If there was any time that they needed to stand up in our nation's history, it was that day to say that they did not agree with it. That they chose party over country.
Thank you, Mr. Ramirez. Ms. Vallejo, how would you describe January 6, 2021?
I would describe it as an example of why we need to stand up and defend democracy. When I was asked to run for Congress, it was right around October, not that long ago. And January 6th was one of the days that crossed my mind. And I knew that taking on this challenge and answering to this call would mean that I would be walking those halls, and that I would be representing our district there when something like that might happen. And that made me rise even stronger, because it is important that all of us know that that is a reflection of where our democracy is right now. It is in turmoil, and that's why it is important for all of us to stand up and represent what true democracy could be and what it means to represent our country to the rest of the world. Our capital is the people's house, and that is why we're doing this work. And that is why I will represent District 15 without a doubt, with all the pride, once we get there in November.
Thank you, Ms. Vallejo. Ms. Alvarado, how would you describe that day?
Well, I also happened to be at the Capitol during 9/11, and it was eerily similar in that it was an attack. And as Ms. Tijerina pointed out, it was a domestic attack. For me, not having leadership stand up and say, this is not okay, was a problem. It was really hard to watch members of Congress huddling down and hutching over seats because they thought they were going to be shot. As somebody watching it, and as somebody who went through something similar, I can only imagine the fear in the hearts of the people there. And what I would say is, we can do better. We can definitely do better. And our country is better. And we need to work together in a bipartisan way so this doesn't happen again.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're going to start our next round with Mr. Rigney. Mr. Rigney, what is your position on marijuana? Do you support its legalization and or decriminalization? Please explain.
So marijuana, I mean, it's been proven to have multiple medical benefits to it. And I do believe that if the FDA can research it and produce these medical benefits, and it can be used as any other drug that is beneficial to our families, to our economy, to our society, it should be explored. And so our jails are full of people that are, as a criminal defense attorney, our jails are full of people who are charged with possession of marijuana, and it's overcrowding our system. So I do believe that it's a crisis and it needs to be addressed properly. And I support researching it and possibly decriminalizing it for that benefit.
Okay. All right. Next up, Ms. Tijerina.
This is one of the strongest points on my platform. The reason that this is one of the strongest points on my platform is that for a lot of reasons, it addresses a lot of the bullet points. So first of all, when it comes to industry, when it comes to taxing people, I believe that it is the duty of our government to find ways of creating revenue instead of taxing the people that are the ones that want to go to school, the ones that want to use their ingenuity to create more money, things like that. So instead of doing that, we create new industry. Lifting the federal ban on marijuana would absolutely do that. The war on marijuana was essentially the war on black and brown people, and we know that. We've known that through all the research that we've gotten back, through all these sociological studies. It leads to racial institutionalism. And when we get our black and brown men out of prison, we make it easier for our black and brown women to raise black and brown children.
Mr. Ramirez, your position on marijuana?
Thank you. I'm not in favor of legalizing marijuana, but I do believe that simple possession of marijuana has been over-criminalized and used to be able to suppress and incarcerate, minorities. Now, we should reduce penalties, right, for simple possession. This is, like less than 2 ounces, which is currently a Class B misdemeanor. But we should reduce it to a Class C misdemeanor, something along the lines of, a seatbelt violation or speeding violation, something where a citation can be issued and they're not incarcerated. But again, I'm not in favor of legalizing marijuana. Now, I am in favor of having research for its medical or medicinal purposes. I would encourage the VA to be able to continue to look into those avenues because it has been able to treat my fellow veterans with PTSD and other people who have suffered from seizures and things of that nature. So again, I do not support the legalization of marijuana for those reasons.
Okay. Ms. Vallejo?
I absolutely do support the legalization of cannabis as well as the decriminalization of possession. It is important that we view this topic from a few different lenses. I want to answer it as a Latina, and I also want to answer it as a businesswoman. As a businesswoman, this is the first time that women have opportunity to have majority stake in a multi-billion-dollar industry. This is the first time that women get this chance, so it's important that Texas catches up because we're falling behind nationwide and even compared to Mexico. And as a Latina, it is true what Ms. Tijerina said, that it disproportionately affects black and brown families and communities, and it is important that we keep our families together. And I would most definitely advocate for veterans and make sure that they are the first ones to get access to this medicinal use of cannabis because it would help them across the board. So I am very passionate about this. I would love to talk and continue about all the topics, but I absolutely do support.
All right, thank you. Ms. Alvarado?
I do support the legalization of marijuana, and I think that there has been research that has shown that it has been very helpful to various people with several medical problems. I also think it's a way for our government to get some tax revenue in and for our state to really have a booming industry, as Ms. Vallejo pointed out, and not just for women, but just small businesses in general. So I am a supporter of legalizing marijuana.
Okay, and finally, Mr. Garza.
I'm all for it. I think it's a state issue. We've seen the success that Colorado, Washington, California have all had. Texas is falling behind, and Texas is losing money. I would do away with it on a federal level, and I would let the legislature decide it for a state level.
Okay, thank you so much.
Start the next question with Ms. Tijerina. During the past 2 decades, the federal government built hundreds of miles of border wall between Texas and Mexico. What is your position on the border wall, and should the government build more, tear it down, or something in between?
For me to make an informed decision on that question, I would have to know the exact research behind border wall security. And honestly, I don't think we have it. And I feel that there are so many more things in our America. Now, don't get me wrong. I do believe in border security. However, if putting money into a structure or something that is not proven itself to do the job that we want it to do or to meet all the bullet points of why it was even put up in the first place, if we are throwing that money away and we cannot prove that us putting that money in, we are reaping the benefits of those choices, then no, I am against the border wall. But if we can prove that it absolutely does its job, then I'd consider building more.
Thank you, Mr. Hirina. Mr. Ramirez.
Yes. So in talking with many of the Border Patrol agents through this campaign, they have told me that the border wall does help in certain instances. Now, you know, the real issue on the whole border wall is immigration, right? And we need to reach a bipartisan agreement on that, because building a wall and walling us off is not the solution, because we have a lot of people coming here seeking asylum, and they can do that easily at the ports of authority. So that's not a solution to fix that, right? Now, on the other aspect, we cannot have open borders, because a nation without borders is not truly a nation. So again, it's going to take a multi-pronged approach, a bipartisanship, to be able to fix this thing. So this issue is more than just a border wall. It's an immigration issue, and we need to fix our longstanding immigration issue and finally lock ourselves in a room, the Republicans and Democrats, and hash this out and understand that not everybody's going to get everything they want, but this is how we need to get lasting change and update our amnesty laws and other treaties and immigration wait times as well.
Thank you, Mr. Ramirez. Ms. Vallejo.
We know that a lot of the infrastructure that has been put into the border wall has not been useful, in the sense that it has not been an effective use of funds, and it has torn our communities apart. Many of us who've been living here our entire lives have only seen families having their properties taken away from them, and also the hyper-militarization of our homes. I grew up going to Al Sanduas Park right on the river for Easter. Now I go and I feel so afraid, because there are so many people on patrol, there are so many helicopters over my head, and I'm just trying to have a great time with my nephews. And it is important that we change and reframe the way that we're communicating about the border and not make it necessarily about the border wall. And I do want to put attention that there is another type of borders getting propped up, and it's a hyper-surveillance border, and we need to make sure that we are advocating for our rights, our privacy rights as citizens and as community members of District 15, because that is going up as well, even if we do not see it. We do need to be working with Border Patrol. We do need to be working with all agencies across the board that are tasked to protect us, because we need to be working together as a community for this large and complicated issue.
Thank you, Ms. Vallejo. Ms. Alvarado.
So this was one of the things where I initially, at the beginning of the campaign, reached out to several of the mayors in this area and just asked them, you know, what do you think about this border wall? How can we solve this? And it was interesting, because a majority of the mayors in this region talked about not necessarily having a brick and mortar type of wall, but more having a smart wall and investing money in technology that would help ensure that we have the proper border security. When we go back and we think about what the brick and mortar wall is actually doing, other than sending signals that we think a wall is going to stop a person from coming over, I think that what our local leadership is thinking as far as working with Border Patrol and having a smart wall is the way to go, as opposed to a brick and mortar.
Thank you, Ms. Alvarado. Mr. Garza.
I honestly feel the border wall is a Republican talking point. I don't think it works. I think that's a very medieval way of looking at things. I'm more of a building bridges kind of guy. So I think if we would use that money elsewhere instead of building a wall that is more of a symbol of kind of stay out of my country, we could honestly just build bridges at our main border points and be a lot more economical like that.
Okay, Mr. Garza. Thank you. Mr. Rigney.
Thank you, sir. So Immigration, our country is founded by immigrants, and so we still have all these immigrants trying to come into our country. Now, we live in gated communities. We live in gated, neighborhoods. We put fences around our homes for a reason. I do believe it's a shame that we have this wall blocking off our country from our natural resources, which is the river. Much like Ms. Vallejo, I grew up going down Salduas, taking jet skis out there to ride and play and go fishing, and it's a shame that we're blocked off. However, the way we use barriers to do all these other things that are for us, I think that we are smart enough as a country to use different kind of barriers, electronic surveillance, whatever it may be, use technology to protect our borders. And our Border Patrol agents and our troopers and our other law enforcement out there, they need this help. And I think we should get them the help, whether it's in the form of a brick and mortar wall or electronic. I prefer electronic type of surveillance.
Thank you.
Okay. We are going to start our next round with Ms. Tijerina. Oh,
Ms. Irina, you answered the last question.
you did? Okay. We're going to start with Mr. Ramirez. Thank you. Okay, here we go. What are the three biggest challenges that the Rio Grande Valley faces, and how would you address them?
Well, definitely would be an employment wages issue, right? Definitely be a wages issue, proper education, and also being able to have a diverse economy. All right. So when talking about, I'll talk about wages and the economy, because those goes hand in hand. We need to make sure that we increase the educational opportunities for all South Texans and our children, because that's the way that we are going to allow them to be able to grow from their and rise beyond their circumstances, right? The poverty, that's what's going to break the cycle of poverty. And especially this generational poverty that we've seen with grandmas and fathers and things like that. Now, we need to focus on STEMs in the high school, science, technology, engineering, but we also need to focus on the vocational and the trade school. And when I'm in Washington, I'm going to bring down that extra money, that federal money, so that way we can get trained high schoolers with welding and electricians and have those licensed for 3 years. So when they graduate, they can be productive members of society.
Thank you so much. Ms. Vallejo, the three biggest challenges for the RGV.
Okay, absolutely. So one thing I want to point out about South Texas and this district is that there's a myth that this is the most affordable place to live. But actually, that's a lie. This is the least affordable place to live because people are still expected to have a livable wage and still expected to pay their expenses at getting paid $7.25. And $7.25 is not a livable wage. And with that said, my three priorities and three strongest challenges that we're facing is access to healthcare. I used to think, give people money and they'll be able to figure out their problems, but that's not the case. The number one reason why people go into debt is because of healthcare expenses. And so it's important that we increase the access across the board to everyone for healthcare. The other thing is the livable wage. We need to increase it at least to $15 an hour and then keep fighting for more. And then the third thing is we need a federal jobs program that guarantees fixing our crumbling infrastructure. We don't need a natural disaster. We just experienced extreme weather not too many days ago, last week, I believe. And our people are still waiting for their checks from FEMA from when it just rained not even that much a few weeks ago. And we don't need these natural disasters for people to be living in floods. It just needs to rain a very tiny bit. This is why we need to make sure that people are granted jobs
Okay.
of a livable wage and that it improves our infrastructure.
Sorry
Thank you.
to interrupt.
I didn't take
All
note of
right.
that.
No
Thank
problem.
you.
Ms. Alvarado, the three biggest challenges the Rio Grande Valley faces, and how would you address them?
I would say three of the biggest challenges would be education, healthcare, and the workforce. And they all tie in together. Working with the healthcare systems, you understand that there's a grave nursing shortage. I mean, this pandemic has only exemplified the fact that we don't have enough nurses, and we don't have enough nurses because we don't have enough programs, and we don't have enough programs because we don't have enough teachers. So this goes hand in hand into what these problems are. We need to be able to address our education system. We need to be able to have programs that provide workforce pipelines into careers such as healthcare. And I also believe that we need to be innovative in the way that we think when we do this. We need to have private-public partnerships and We have already done this.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Garza, the three biggest challenges for the Rio Grande Valley?
I feel the three biggest challenges are COVID, immigration, and education. I would tackle COVID by a vaccine mandate. I feel it's a race between the variants and the vaccines. The more shots we get into people's arms, the better we're all protected. As far as immigration, I feel like we really do need to start documenting the undocumented. We need to bring them out of the shadows. This community has lived here. They've contributed to this area, and just documenting them, allowing them to work and pay taxes is pretty much all they want. And I think we could do a lot like that. The third big issue I feel the RGV faces is education. We really do need to start looking at a national education system. I feel the laboratory experiment in the states, where every state is running their own education institution, has pretty much failed. Texas is like 40-something, and we really do need to, set a standard. The same education in New York and California should be the same education here in Texas.
Thank you so much. Mr. Rigney, the three biggest challenges for the RGV?
So I also agree that the three biggest challenges is the challenges that our small businesses and our community is facing in obtaining jobs and healthcare and education. Our small businesses and our community, we need to provide some kind of aid to open our businesses back up, get them back on their feet, and get people back to work. On our healthcare, we need to lower the cost of medication. We need to help, especially special needs children. We need to help them. I pay over $50,000 a year in healthcare for my family, and that's unreasonable. We need to get some sort of affordable healthcare back to people. Over 60% of Hispanics don't have health insurance. That's unacceptable. And then our education, I am a product of education. I'm an engineer, I'm an attorney, I'm self-made, but we need to get access to education to our community and to our children. That's the only way we're gonna overcome poverty and some of these issues that we have before us.
Okay. And Ms. Tijerina, the three biggest challenges for the RGV?
I think the three biggest challenges go hand in hand. Public corruption, equality of opportunity, and job creation. 2.5 million special ed children were denied special education between 2004 and 2014. No one ever talks about that. The reason that I know about it is because my child was one of them. We had no federal oversight. For 10 years, 2.5 million of our most vulnerable Texans were allowed to fall through the cracks. We have no idea what their life outcomes were. This is the only part of the nation that has had the director of the FBI personally visit them. We do not have good and decent systems in place to make sure that our people have equality of outcome and equality of opportunity. Then we fail to make a basis and a good infrastructure for the rest of our society to grow in the way that it should, and we stall growth.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Nader. Do we have more time for one more question?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Well, in fact, we said we would go until 8 o'clock. That may be a little longer than what we want to go, but we have plenty of time, so use the questions that you.
Okay.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. We will start now with Ms. Vallejo. Ms. Vallejo, in 2020, then President Donald Trump banned federal agencies from conducting training in white privilege or critical race theory. He called the training divisive and anti-American. Do you think the federal agencies should be able to hold training on white privilege or critical race theory? Please explain your position.
I think that it is very important, especially in our region, for us to understand our cultural history. I think we have been the victims of many crimes against humanity and against us just because of where we were born and what we look like and because of our last names. And I think it's important, and this does fall under CRT, critical race theory, and information that wants to get banned out of the books here in Texas, and for our children in schools. It's important that we understand and embrace our heritage, our culture, and that we start centering our unique history. So it's very important that there is not bans on the true history of our cultural and heritage.
Thank you, Ms. Vallejo. Ms. Alvarado.
I would have to agree with that. I think that critical race theory, the term, has been used much like the border wall to be divisive, when in fact you're talking about a history of a people and you're talking about what they went through in order to survive living in this country. So I would agree in saying that it's very important that we revisit this term and that we understand that what we teach in schools to our children is important and history is important, because what we don't want is a lot of parts of history to repeat themselves.
Thank you, Ms. Alvarado. Mr. Garza.
Yes, I feel this goes back to education. I feel like critical race theory is that Looney Tune kind of monster that the Republicans just made up. Really, it's just history, and we don't want to be whitewashing it. We actually do need to go back and teach it. It's something that happened, and yeah, if you don't teach it, history will repeat itself. I mean, I'm a student of history myself, and I feel like it does do circles. So if we really don't explain to our children what happened, they are going to be doomed to repeat it.
Okay, Mr. Garza. Mr. Rigney.
Thank you. So that whole theory, I mean, it really is, to me, it being divisive. And I hate that the divisiveness in this country that's happening. I mean, we're all the same. We all bleed red blood. We're all human. And so we shouldn't create any divisiveness in this country. And so, I think that I support anything that teaches a history of this country, that teaches who we are, where we came from. I mean, I'm half Anglo and half Mexican, and I'm not talking about half Hispanic. I'm half Mexican, but we all just need to get along. I don't care if we're red or blue or any other color. I mean, it doesn't matter. We need to get along. We need to learn the history of our country equally and do something so that history does not repeat itself, but yet we move forward all together.
Thank you, Mr. Rigney. Ms. Hirina.
When I was in second grade, my first day of second grade, I entered my school, and up on top, I saw that it was called Robert E. Lee Elementary. And I told myself, why is it called that? Because by the time I had gone to that first day of school, I learned about racism, and I learned about the Civil War, and I knew who Robert E. Lee was. And when I asked my teachers, they didn't know what to do with me. And what they told me was that he was a war hero. And what I told them was that he fought to keep Black people in chains. And had I had critical race theory in a way that I could understand it, I know that if my fellow students had it, our America would have been a little bit different. If we understand that, yes, every life should matter, but if the statistics show, and if everything that we have learned shows that not everybody's lives matter to everybody, to such a degree that some demographics are dying at a higher rate than others, and some people are having a worse outcome in their lives than others, simply based on their race, then it matters, and it should be taught.
Thank you, Mr. Hirina. Mr. Ramirez.
Yes. So if you don't understand history, you're doomed to repeat it. And as the only licensed teacher here, I am big on education, right? Now, the term CRT, or critical race theory, has been hijacked, and it's been changed. Now, before committing, I do believe that we should have a properly trained workforce. Now, before committing to what would actually be in those trainings, such as, the white privilege CRT, what kind of details, what are you putting in it? It'd be important to have that revised and a committee to be able to look at that, because I think it's too, it's just too broad to be able to say, would you support that or not? But I do believe that we do need to educate people in our federal agency. It's just a matter of doing it in the proper way, doing it in the balanced way, and doing it with facts and not anything that is looking to incite or continue to divide.
Thank you. Ms. Vallejo, we started with
Yeah, we
you,
just
right?
started with me.
Okay.
The next question would go Ms. Alvarado.
All right. Republicans saw big gains in South Texas in 2020, and many people believe that this district could turn red. Why do you think the GOP has seen an increase in support here, Ms. Alvarado?
I think that there's been an increase of support here because there's been a lack of representation here. And I believe that when you have a lack of representation and you feel that your needs are not being met by the member you've elected, you will elect someone else. And I think that that was the case in our district. I also feel that Donald Trump had a big role in the surge of Republican votes in District 15. And I also feel that this district has been a Democratic stronghold since 1903 and will remain a Democratic stronghold if we are able to properly represent the constituents of District 15 with the needs and concerns that are important to them.
Thank you so much. Mr. Garza?
I believe we saw an increase of support with the Republicans. It's because we had the defeated president, Donald Trump, really just not caring about COVID restrictions, just going out, having rallies. A lot of people saw that. And the nation right now is just so polarized that, like, a lot of them will just believe anything they see on Facebook. And we also had a rampant Facebook surge of fake news that really, I feel like, got to people, radicalized people, and that's why we saw an increase.
Thank you so much. Mr. Rigney?
Thank you. So, like Mr. Garza, I do believe that, you know, the whole Trump bump had an effect on our area down here, and I think that was part of the issues. But also, I mean, this country, you know, our district, especially as a conservative district in general, we believe in God, you know, we believe in our guns. And so, you know, we have some grounds that are common between us that we need to work with bipartisan support. And so I think that, you know, part of the issues also was the border, the security, safety issues that, you know, some people just said, we've had enough. And I agree, you know, we haven't had enough representation. And so we need representation for our democracy, for our democratic system, and we need someone who's going to go in and work and establish bipartisan support in order to make sure that our district remains democratic. And I think I can do that for this district.
Thank you so much. Ms. Tijerina?
I absolutely 100% believe that the Republicans are mistaking the support for Trump as the support for the Republican Party. And I think that they are using the statistics of so many people voting for Trump as supporting the Republican Party. You had a surge in energy in a certain candidate, and us as Democrats did not match that energy in a Democratic candidate for president. And in our Rio Grande Valley, it reflected that. I know and I understand too that in the Rio Grande Valley that year, I ran as a Republican openly as a Democrat to get my name out there to prime myself for this seat. 75,000 people voted for me. They put my name there, not because I was Republican, because I'm Vanessa Stephanie Tijerina. So I don't think it's about being Republican and Republicans getting the support that they never had before. It is simply because of Trump and probably the votes that I got, 75,000 people.
Mr. Ramirez?
Yes. Plain and simple, right? The Democrats here in the district are different, just like myself. I'm a South Texas Democrat with South Texas values. I'm not a New York Democrat or a California Democrat. And when I go to Washington, D.C. with your blessing, your vote, I'm not going to be any one of those. I'm going to be still a South Texas Democrat. And we tend to be more moderate and more conservative in our views. And what's happening is that the Democratic Party took us for granted down here, and they weren't speaking to us. right? They weren't speaking to us. And nowadays, when you go and you turn on any kind of news, whether it's MSNBC, CNN, or Fox News, whatever it is, right? And you have, people are seeing the Republicans and the Democrats on there. And when you see a Democrat, it's a New York Democrat. And now they're talking about taking away your guns and having open borders and having all kinds of amnesty for everybody, right? And defunding the police. Well, that doesn't work here in our district. And so then you get a Republican saying, hey, no, we need to have strong national security and border security, know who's coming in and out. So then that person watching TV, that Democrat, starts thinking, maybe I'm more of a Republican, but it's not true. It's just a different type of Democrat.
Thank you so much. Ms. Vallejo?
So I'm excited for anyone who's watching this in the Democratic Party, because this is a call to action for y'all to take a look at District 15, for y'all to take a look at the South Texas region and to invest with your money. It's so important that you are helping us develop the pipeline of Democratic leadership, because the Republicans have been doing that not just for one cycle, but for more than just one. And we are seeing that effects. And it's important that you are called to action to support the Democratic candidates and for you to support me. We are definitely right now building up our campaigns, but I have been on the phones for hours every day since I announced my run for candidacy, and people have been saying that same lie, that the Republicans are going to take the office, that the Republicans are building greater leadership opportunities, and that is not the case. We need to make sure that those voters who went from one party to the next are not considered loyal to that party. They are swing voters. They are Latinos that have been neglected. I myself felt like the Democratic Party did not care about my vote. They did not care about the relationship they were building with me or other members in our community. They just cared about whatever they needed just to get the numbers that they wanted, and that was it. But it's important that we keep building the infrastructure, and I'm so excited to be the Pueblos candidate to inspire youth and first-time voters to come out as well.
Thank you so much.
So now, were you the first one to answer this? No, it was,
I just answered this.
that's right, okay. We'll start with Mr. Garza again. In 2020, President Donald Trump negotiated an agreement for U.S. troops to leave Afghanistan, and President Joe Biden withdrew them in 2021. What do you think of the decision to withdraw U.S. troops from Afghanistan, and how it was handled at the end?
I'm so happy that we're out of Afghanistan. I feel like we wasted 20 years in, trying to oppress the nation. We should have finished it a lot sooner. We should have got out a lot sooner. I mean, of course, I'm upset about how it happened, but we need to understand that President Trump made that agreement, and it just fell to President Biden. It was still the most successful exit of any war that we've exited out of. And I'm glad that that's finally over. That has been around since I was in middle school. We were just wasting billions of dollars over there, and not anymore. The next one we need to leave is Iraq.
Thank you. Mr. Rigney.
So, thank you. So, I mean, it's difficult to second guess our commander-in-chief, but, strategically, I think that we needed to be out of that country. We needed to end the war. We'd been there too long, and we needed to give them back their independence and let them run their country. It's not our job to run other countries. We just need to set them up and get them going on the right path. The exit, the way it happened, obviously it failed. The country fell back into the hands of the, I don't know what to call them anymore. There's too many criminals over there. But the country fell back into the wrong hands, and we needed to have exited in a way that was phased out so that the Taliban won't take control. And we needed to come out slowly in phases and make sure that the locals could regain and keep control of their country. So unfortunately, I mean, it was just a bad situation, but we needed to be out of that country.
Thank you. Ms. Tejina?
I agree that it was a good decision to move, but we should have done more to ensure. There were so many lives lost on the part of Americans, and I don't have to be a veteran to understand that. I'm the daughter of a 20-year veteran of the armed forces, so veterans issues, this is one of them. A lot of people went over there. Not only did they lose their lives, make the ultimate sacrifice, but they also made the sacrifices with their children, and they came back not being their whole selves, either mentally or physically. And I believe that all of that was for one goal. And if we fail to ensure that one goal at the very end, it's almost as if everything they did was in vain. And what we could have done at the very least was ensure that the outcome was going to be long-standing and that the goal that we initially were in there for was one that was remaining in place. And we didn't do that. We could have done a better job.
Thank you. Mr. Ramirez?
Having spent the longest year of my life in Afghanistan and being away from my wife and my son and missing his first birthday, I take seriously the lost treasure that we put in there and the blood that was spilled and the lives lost of fellow members. Now, I think we can all agree that it didn't go smoothly and that either the planning or the execution failed. And 13 brave soldiers lost their lives, and that was a travesty. Now, we need to make sure that we hold people responsible, that if and when I go to Congress, I think Congress, or we need to have Congress be able to investigate and figure out what happened and what were the missteps, so that way we make sure that we do not let this happen again. We all know that exiting a country, exiting a war is one of the most dangerous, if not the most dangerous parts. And we knew that going in. And it failed, and we failed those service members. And we need to have accountability.
Ms. Vallejo?
Yes. So I am a progressive Democrat, and I think it's important that we approach foreign affairs and foreign relations as well and through that lens. And it is important that our country does not go entering foreign countries to destabilize others and cause friction on a global scale with us as a target. And it is important that we remember exactly what happened in Afghanistan, from the point not even understanding why we were there, to how we exited, which was a complete chaos and mess, and an example and reflection of how decisions are being made on our behalf around the world. And it is important also to remember that the travesty of us going to Afghanistan is not over. There are still many veterans in our communities and throughout the district that still have many needs, so we need to make sure that we are prioritizing. And I just want to throw a shout out because we need a VA hospital in the district. So that's definitely one priority that we need to make sure comes to fruition. Thank you.
Ms. Alvarado?
I would say that I would agree with most everyone on the panel in saying that this was not an easy decision that the commander-in-chief had to make. I think that anytime there are soldiers and people's lives on the line, it's hard to make those types of decisions. Do I agree that we needed to be out of Afghanistan? Yes, I agree we needed to be out of there. Was it the ideal situation? No, it in fact was not. But I do think that it was a step towards moving away from going into countries that we really need not be in. And I think that the president did what he thought was the best with the information that he had at that time for this particular situation.
Thank you, Ms. Alvarado. Next question.
Okay, the next question. We've heard you mention bipartisanship, and we understand that hardly any issue is ever black or white, right? And so having said that, Mr. Rigney, do you share any common ground with the Republican Party?
No. As I stated previously, and much like Ruben, I'm a South Texas Democrat, right? So we do share values. You know, we have a conservative district, like I said, believes in God. We go to church. We grew up Catholic. We love hunting. We love our guns. So we share values. I have many, many friends across the board that are Republican and some are Democrat. So, you know, the divisiveness in this country has gone too far. The common ground that we can share is what we need to explore, and we need to be able to build on that common ground and look at nothing but what's best for our families, look at what's best for our country, look at what's best for our veterans, our military, our law enforcement, and build on that and worry about rebuilding our country together instead of being divisive and focusing on what separates us. We need to focus on what keeps us together.
Thank you so much, Ms. Tijerina. Do you share any common ground with the Republican Party?
Well, first of all, I want to say that I'm seriously considering if whoever wins this seat, and I most certainly put my money on myself and my voters. Obviously, I wouldn't be running. Whoever wins this seat has to fill up about 20 cabinet seats. And I'm seriously considering making sure that half of those are Democrat and half are Republican, simply because I want the people to understand that I care about both sides. To be honest, the majority of my voters, they are not affiliated with either party. They are not affiliated with either party, so it doesn't matter really to them. But because the question was posed, one of the things that I align with the Republicans is I don't like increased taxes, and I think that we should find new ways to tax people. New ways to create revenue instead of taxing people. I am also a very much pro Second Amendment. I believe that we absolutely need to be able to have at least handguns. As a woman, as a survivor of domestic violence, as a survivor of a hate crime, I totally believe in the Second Amendment.
Thank you so much. Mr. Ramirez?
Yes. The biggest thing that we share in common with Republicans is that we're all American. And we forget that most of the time. When that hatred and you turn on the TV and you see the news and you see the fighting, you read the comments on Facebook, we forget that. But we are all American, and we need to remember that. That we all want what's best for our country. At least everybody that's elected, I would hope that's their goal. So we also share values, right? Being Texan, we like our gun. I'm pro Second Amendment. But I do believe in balance, right? So I don't believe that we should be overtaxing businesses because we've seen that they'll just go somewhere else. We have to have a balance where there's an incentive enough to be able to work and reach that American dream, but not just give everything away for free, but understand that there is inequities, and you need to make sure that you are helping people rise above to be able to reach their God-given potential and are not just stuck in their circumstances because of where they were born.
Thank you. Ms. Vallejo?
I'm a first-time candidate, and I'm a small business owner and community organizer. And when I was asked to run for Congress, I know that it was because my community saw me working across all sectors, across all industries with folks from all walks of life. And this is exactly how I will lead as a congresswoman. I will make sure that I'm working with folks across the aisle to make sure that we prioritize the needs for District 15 and make sure that they are not being used and operationalized against us. And this is something that I've been working as an example, and I will keep doing so when I'm in Congress. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Ms. Alvarado?
I think bipartisanship was one of the things I learned when I worked in Washington with Congressman Ruben Hinojosa. And one of the great examples of bipartisanship that I've had is really seeing eye to eye with Senator John Cornyn regarding Gear Up. I currently work at the Education Service Center, Region 1, and we have 3 Gear Up grants totaling almost $88 million. Senator Cornyn has been one of the biggest advocates for these grants. These grants are imperative for our community, and it's important to know that when you work together, these types of programs get done, and this is the type of bipartisanship that we need in this area.
Thank you so much. Mr. Garza?
The question was, do I share any common grounds with the Republicans?
Yes.
No, I don't. I feel Democrats have been doing a good job on their own. Not one Republican voted for the American Rescue Plan when people were dying and hospitals were overflowing, the economy was bad, unemployment was skyrocketing. Not one of them on the Senate or the House voted to help President Biden because I would say pettiness. And they would rather sink the ship than, and if they're not captain, they would want to sink the ship. President Obama said it best. There's blue states, there's red states. We are the United States. Of course, if there's something that I agree with the Republicans, I'll work with them on. But I feel the nation right now is so polarized, politics is so polarized that those bipartisan days are over. And it's all thanks to the Republicans, not the Democrats.
Thank you so much.
Speaking of the American Rescue Plan, In March 2020, COVID showed, especially the Rio Grande Valley, that we needed to revisit our issues with broadband, especially with students and people working from home. The American Rescue Plan brought funds recently, thank you to President Biden, to help on that issue. And then on January 7th, the Monitor wrote through the editorial that the monies needed to be used in a more public-private partnership, and local governments need to look at different ways to utilize those funds. How do you feel, and how would you make those funds, how do you feel the money should be used for broadband, and how would you hold it accountable for local governments to use it? Mr. Hirina, we'll start with you.
I believe that it's something that needs to, communication is the best thing in any kind of situation. Whether it's in a romantic situation, a situation with a parent and a child, with a voter and its leaders, with voters and its leaders, with the community and their community leaders, and anything that promotes the maximum amount of communication is always the best. And I think that that's something that would absolutely promote communication, and anything that will promote communication will always be something that I will agree with.
Thank you. Mr. Ramirez?
Yes. So I saw firsthand, like many families, my wife and I, where our kitchen table turned into a classroom. And we, once again, my wife's also an educator, and we became teachers, right, during the whole lockdown with COVID. And it was very difficult. But I understood that I was lucky because I could afford that. I rose above my circumstances of poverty and could do that. But not everybody else could. And so internet access is one of the big things in this area that we're suffering from. But we were able to see really good outcomes where our local leaders were really stepping up, using these funds to be able to increase citywide broadband access, as well as other partnerships with school districts, such as Edinburgh school districts. If you go and you drive down the cities, you can see these little internet pods, right? But we need to make sure that we are using those funds and using them in the most in the areas that really need it. And we need to make sure that we vet contractors, because there's potential for fraud and things there. So we definitely need to keep an eye on that.
Thank you. Ms. Vallejo, how would you make sure the local governments use the funds properly for broadband?
I would definitely empower our cities to make sure that they have access to funds before going through other people's hands. And also encouraging and making sure that they are able to facilitate relationships with the school districts, but also to prioritize the smaller towns and the smaller cities in our district. If you go 15, 20 minutes outside of any main area, you will go into smaller towns that are very much like the most rural parts of our district. And these are the students and these are the families that are the most left behind, not only with broadband, but with other infrastructure as well. They don't even have roads in many cases. And so it's really important that we put the money in the hands of the people who can make the decisions, and the resources in the hands of the people who need it the most. And I've been on the phone with mayors across our district, and they have told me that this is an issue and that they are prioritizing this. I do want to give a shout out to Alton, which is the small town where I'm from, because they have been advancing this just like the bigger cities of McAllen and Edinburgh. So I'm very, very proud of all our cities throughout the entire district doing the work.
Thank you, Ms. Vallejo. Ms. Alvarado?
I also want to give a shout out to the city of FAR for being a national model for broadband and being able to work with the school district in having the availability of every household in the city to have access to fiber optic. These are the types of partnerships, and this is the type of innovation that a representative in this area needs to be aware of, because these are the types of partnerships that can be replicated in other parts of the district. So I do believe that having the cities working in partnerships with the school districts is a win-win situation. And I also think that having leadership that can see outside the box and can be innovative through the use of the funds is important. Again, I would applaud the city of FAR for their collaboration in the broadband and actually say that they are a national model for not only our region, but for the rest of the country.
Thank you, Ms. Alvarado. Mr. Garza.
I feel that internet and broadband has become an essential need today. It has become a common, just like clean water. I feel the funds should be given to the city so that they can create a municipal Wi-Fi system throughout their city. I don't think we should give the money to corporations, because the first thing they're going to do is they're going to give it to their executives and their shareholders.
Thank you, Mr. Garza. Mr. Rigney.
The question is, how would we?
So the ARPA funds, right, were just allocated to help the digital divide. The monitor just on January 7th asked that local governments use a public-private partnership approach to make sure that corporations step up and be held accountable. How would you make sure those funds be accountable, and do you support government-owned networks like others have on this panel?
Okay, so my father passed away when I was 11 years old, but he made it real clear to me that prior to his passing, he wanted us to get educated. He wanted us to move ahead. And in today's society, broadband and internet is crucial to education. It's very necessary. Now, as a general contractor here, I do infrastructure work. I do stuff for the cities and the local governments. And the Texas Government Code has procurement methods that are set on how those funds are allocated and how they're spent to make sure there's no fraud going on. So I believe the code is set out, and as long as the partnerships, and I do also applaud the city of FAR and their collaboration with PSJ, and they are a model of how they're distributing broadband across the city. And I think we need more partnerships like that. And as long as they abide by the procurement methods that the government code has set out, I think it's a benefit to our society. So that will be the system that we need to make sure the government or the funds are spent properly and in accordance with the partnerships that they make.
Thank you. Nedra? Yes, that was our last question, and we'll go ahead and ask for closing remarks.
Yes, so we'll go ahead and start with Mr. Ramirez. You have 1 minute to appeal to the voters and make closing remarks.
Thank you. Well, thank you once again to Futuro RGV, League of Women's Voters, and the Monitor for hosting us and taking the time to do this, and everybody joining us at home, becoming an informed voter. It's very important that we become informed on all the candidates and and all that information. Now, I'm from here, as I told you. I lived here. I rose above from poverty. I know what it's like to live out of a car and not have a house. I know what it's like not to have enough food. But I also know what it's like to succeed and overcome those obstacles. And because of that, I am not pulling the ladder away that I used to climb up. I want to give a hand to be able to reach all South Texas families, their kids, their children, to be able to succeed just as I did, so that they can reach their God-given potential and reach the American dream. Now, I know that I'm a candidate that can win in November. So when you choose a candidate, make sure that you're looking at the one that is also viable to not just win the primary, but win in November as well. Again, my name is Ruben Ramirez. On behalf of my wife, Julia, my 2 sons, Ruben and Ricky, who are watching, I love you. Thank you so much for joining us here today. And God bless you, and God bless the United States of America. And thank you to my veterans.
Thank you so much. Ms. Vallejo, closing remarks.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone who's joined us for this conversation tonight. It's so important that you stay engaged with the democratic process of learning who your candidates are, of registering to vote, and then turning out on February 14th, because that is the first day of early vote. We're only going to have 10 days for early vote, and then the elections are on March 1st. And we need to make sure that you show up. It is so important that you take on the power as a voter, because if not, you're going to allow many others in the district to vote for you. And I am asking for your vote and your support, because I am the only viable candidate who could put up a fight to keep this district blue. I am Michelle Vallejo. I am the people's candidate, and I cannot wait to serve you in Congress. Thank you for tonight.
Thank you so much. Ms. Alvarado?
Again, I want to thank Futuro RGV for this opportunity and the opportunity to provide us a platform to speak on the community, to the community of District 15. We're at a crossroads, and experience matters in this election. I can confidently say that my experience working for Congressman Hinojosa, working at the Department of Labor, and in the public and private sector has me prepared to begin working effectively on day one. My experience in leadership stems from thinking outside the box, building partnerships, and solving problems for thousands of people. I've managed to spearhead initiatives, develop pilot programs, acquire millions of dollars of funding for workforce training, and understanding the needs of our community, not just today, but for many years to come. I'm proud of my accomplishments, but my job is not done. I'm Dr. Elisa Alvarado, and I ask for your vote, and I will continue to work hard for District 15 in Washington. Unidos podemos. Together we can.
Thank you so much. Mr. Garza, closing remarks?
Yes, I want to thank you guys for moderating at last minute. I want to thank the monitor, Futuro RGV, the League of Women Voters, everybody that tuned in tonight to hear us out. I would also want to thank the candidates because it takes a lot to run this. We have 7 counties, guys, and we're all members of the same party. I think all of us could do a good job. And I want you all to think about me March 1st. I'm Julio Garza. I'm a Democrat with a backbone.
Thank you so much. Mr. Rigney, closing remarks.
Thank you. So, guys, I'm not a politician. I'm just a businessman. I'm a family man. I'm an engineer. I'm an attorney. I'm a general contractor. I wear many hats. In my experience, my education, my background, I believe gives me the best all-around perspective on helping in this district. So when I get to Washington, I want to go roll up my sleeves and get to work. I want to go and be the best representative for this district that we can be. Every piece of legislation that comes before me, I'm going to look at it in one way only. Is it the best for our families or not? If it's not the best for our families, I'm not going to vote for it. We need to take our voice to Washington, not just my voice. And every piece of legislation, I will check with my constituents, and I will say, guys, is this what you want or not? And if that's not what our constituents want and what's best for our district, I'm not going to vote for it. So again, I'm John Villarreal Rigney, and I just want to say thank you to our moderators and to our constituents. Juntos podemos hacer un cambio para mejorar nuestras vidas. So please support me.
Thank you so much. And finally, Ms. Tijerina, closing remarks.
Hello. You all know me because you've seen my story. You've seen it play out for the last 7 years here in the Rio Grande Valley. You've seen me be just a regular mom, just a student, a nurse. I think I'm the only one with a STEM background. I actually have a degree in biology. I've been a nurse for over 25 years. I'm a 9th-generation Texan. I'm a mom, I'm a grandmother, and I've been on the other side. When I tell you I've been on the other side, I am one of those families that was affected by 2.5 million children not getting special education. I have proven that I will fight for Texans, the most vulnerable of Texans, even outside of an elected seat. And if you've seen the fight that I've given for so long, then please imagine how I will fight for you, how I will fight for you. And I know that you feel my love. I know that you do. And that's what matters the most. And I've told you for 7 years, if the candidates are not talking about the issues, they are not going to fix the issues for you. We are the ones that we were waiting for our entire lives. We are the heroes. Please go vote Vanessa Stephanie Tijerina. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much to all of you for being here and answering these questions. I know Nedra has a couple of closing remarks herself. She's going to remind you of those important dates you need to watch out for. So without further ado, I will give the floor to Ms. Knurk.
Well, thank you, candidates. A big thank you to my moderators who came in at the very last moment. Thank you to our technical staff, and thank you to all the FaceTime and Futura website viewers who are going to be watching and learning about the candidates so that you can go with an educated vote. And I do want to tell you that Futura RGV is going to be holding candidate forums for a great number of candidates besides our Democratic District 15 candidates. We'll do the Republican District Candidate 15 on January the 20th. We will do House District 34 tomorrow night and Thursday night. We will do the Texas Senate District 27 on January the 19th, Hidalgo County Judge on January the 17th, the State Board of Education District 2 on January the 24th, Hidalgo Commission Districts 2 and 4 on January 26th, the Hidalgo County Party chairs on January 27th, the U.S. House District 38, no, I beg your pardon, yeah, the U.S. House District 28 on January the 31st, and of course, these are Republican and Democrat candidates in all cases, and on February 1, Texas House District 37. Be an informed voter. Get out and find out what these candidates can do if they are elected your leaders and how their vision is going to work for you and for us. And be an informed voter. Exercise your duty, exercise your right, and exercise your privilege to vote to make us a stronger democracy, and then go out and vote. Thank you very much.
All right. A quick reminder before we let you go. Again, early voting starts February the 14th, runs through the 25th, and Election Day is March 1st. Go out there and vote.